Good morning. We are back. It's been a while. We're reading The Mystery of History Volume 4, and we've made an executive decision. We've decided that we're not going to keep trying to put the scientists from Science in the Age of Reason in there. It was just becoming too complicated. So we're on page 26, and we are looking at Lesson 5, The Enlightenment with Voltaire and Jean-Jacques Rousseau. We're on Voltaire. Okay, so let me see here. Well, let's just review about the Enlightenment. It was when they were looking, the philosophers during this time, now this was the 1700s, mid-1700s, were looking to human reason instead of God to understand man better. All right, back to Voltaire. Let's pause and consider the heart and mind of Voltaire. Since he was so disgruntled with the Roman Catholic Church, did this mean that he was a reformer or perhaps even an atheist? No. Voltaire was neither a reformer nor an atheist. He was a deist. So deist, she says, let's define the term. I'm glad she said that because I was about to define the term. A deist is someone who believes that God created the universe. Oh, I didn't know this part. Abandoned it and is waiting to return for the last judgment. A deist does not believe that God is still involved with man or that man can have a relationship with God. So he doesn't believe that he didn't believe that we're like that because Jesus lives inside us, that gives God an open door to earth. That brings heaven to earth now when Jesus lives inside us. So he didn't believe that. He believed that God just kind of took his hands off and is just kind of watching everything until the last judgment. I don't know.
What's the last judgment?
So when Jesus comes back, I don't know if he believed. I'll have to read a little bit further. I'll have to read a little bit further to see if he believed in Jesus. But when Jesus comes back and the end of the world happens, everybody will then have to meet with the Lord, and either you lived on the life of Christ or you didn't. And if you lived on the life of Christ, then you're judged by Christ. If you didn't live on the life of Christ, then you're judged solely on your own works. But this is where, if you did live on the life of Christ, then your works of faith, you're rewarded for the works of faith, but the things that you didn't do by faith get burned up. So it's like they don't last. It didn't matter. Okay, so a deist is not a Christian because a genuine Christian professes to have an ongoing personal relationship with God through Jesus Christ. Okay, so it doesn't look like he believed that Jesus was God and that he is the Savior. Voltaire was one of the most influential deists who ever lived. His skeptical ideas rose in popularity in Europe at a time when men and women were tired of religious war, nonsensical persecution. That just means this doesn't even make sense. Or just persecuting people just to persecute. Church politics and government corruption. He knew the horrifying stories of the Inquisition and the reckless killings of the Reformation. He knew the church had wrestled he knew the church and state had wrestled over authority. I mean, they were going back and forth trying to take authority from each other. And he knew that the French government was unfair and biased towards the rich. Voltaire observed all of this and the suffering that resulted. Here's one specific example of a system gone bad. During Voltaire's lifetime, there was a Protestant Frenchman named Jean Calas. He was accused of taking his son's life or killing his son for practicing Catholicism. She says, now I don't know if Calas was innocent or guilty of this, but the way in which his case was handled was barbaric. That means totally without any type of human heart compassion. After the Parliament of Toulouse declared that Calas was guilty, despite the fact that he pleaded innocent, they tortured him until he admitted he was guilty. Okay, so we're not going to read all that. So that's a little bit too heavy. But yeah, they basically tortured him. They were really hateful. Voltaire considered this horrific case and petitioned against it for 3 years. By his writings, he made the incident more public, and the masses, meaning regular people who are going about their day, they listened and they cared. And the case was eventually overturned, and Calas was declared an innocent man, even though that he had already been killed because they declared him guilty. But his name was cleared, and Voltaire was nicknamed the Defender of Calas. My point is that when Voltaire saw this hypocrisy and extreme hatefulness, he drew attention to it, hoping to set men free from corruption. By the end of his life, he was nearly worshipped. Voltaire was nearly worshipped for dismantling barbaric thought and practice. Another way he brought attention to tyranny and despair. Tyranny is basically you do whatever you want. You don't really care about the effects of your actions. Whatever you say just goes, and that's just it. He wrote a short story called Candide. In this story, a man who travels the world pursuing the woman he loves, and he just barely escapes one bizarre catastrophe after the other. So he's traveling the world, pursuing a woman he loves, and he's just escaping catastrophe after catastrophe. The adventures of Candide are so far-fetched that they are intentionally ridiculous. The entire book is a satire. A satire means I'm mocking. It's a satire I'm mocking a certain something. He might be mocking the church, so it's like a satire of the church. He was making fun of the philosopher named Gottfried Leibniz, who claimed that all was for the good. Okay, so I think that phrase might be he might have said that was for the Bible, because there's the phrase in the Bible that all things work together for good. For those who love God and those who are called according to his purpose. But it's for those who love God, and for those who are called according to his purpose. Voltaire disagreed and could not make sense of hardship and evil. That is a hard thing, because there is a lot of evil. And I would say that kind of relates to what Pastor Mark says. It seems that Voltaire, he was looking at a lot of the things that were happening in his society, and he was like, there can't be a good God if all this stuff is happening. And remember, Pastor Mark puts a different slant on it, and he says that it's not the evidence of a lack of a God, it's evidence of the presence of what? Evil. Of evil. It's evidence of the presence of evil. And also the thing that Pastor Mark points out that I think is also true is he talks about the news and how when we are constantly have our minds and thoughts connected to the news, it's like the tree of the knowledge of good and evil is too much for us. We can't just sit here and read news story after news story of all the evil that's happening. Because if you notice, they don't report very much good news. I have to go actively look for good news. And even the good news that they report isn't that good. It's kind of like, man rescued after this and this and this. Well, still something tragic had to happen before something good had to happen. You see what I mean? He was rescued from the... Okay, well, his house still burned down. That type of thing. Anyway, I say that to say I think Voltaire was doing that as well. He was kind of consumed with these... what was the news of his nation. He didn't have social media, but he was seeing what was going on, and that was his focus. So Voltaire wrote Candide during the 7 Years' War, when there was a great deal of suffering. And through the character of Candide, he was able to express his deistic worldview that God had abandoned man, and it was difficult, if not impossible, to make good of any horrible events. She says, I disagree, but that's not my point here. She's just trying to say what Voltaire's perspective was. So we're going to stop there because we still have a little ways to go on Voltaire, and we're not going to be able to get through him all today. And then we have to get through Jean-Jacques Rousseau. So we are on page 27, and we will do some more probably tomorrow. All right, we will chat later. Bye.